'Tis the season to spend ridiculous amounts of money in the name of the fat man, and Barnes & Noble are back at it again with their 50% off the Criterion Collection sale, which means that it is also time for another Criterion Cram, where rather than watching films at random, this week all movies watched were from the Criterion Collection, and a portion of them will be discussed in this video. Of course, Criterion is a company dedicated to the restoration, preservation, and presentation of films, both classic and modern, basically just important movies, and they offer extremely high quality releases at an arm and a leg a piece. Even then, I'm a big fan, and many of their releases are unavailable in the Blu-ray or even DVD formats anywhere else. We got 5 movies to talk about, and we'll follow it up with some recommendations from the collection from yours truly. It seems in every discussion or list of recommendations from the Criterion Collection, at some point Jean-Luc Godard's Breathless makes an appearance, so it's only fitting that it should be discussed here. This movie's title is perfect, as the film is full of energy, alive, charming, and its claim to fame is that it invented the jump cut, which is awesome. I freaking love jump cuts. I use jump cuts all the times. For that, it's an important film, and I see why it's a part of the collection, but even to this day, this is an entertaining chunk of cinema. On top of the cuts, a jazzy score, and the constant changing of languages, Jean-Paul Belmondo's character adds an extra dose of vigor to the mix. He's ridiculously confident, narcissistic, vain, even psychopathic, but all in a likable way. You know, the lovable human piece of shit. We got a charming movie that's fun and charismatically sloppy, but at the same time, it looks like it's something just about anybody could have made. Richard Linklater of the Before films and Boyhood fame made a movie called Slacker back in 1991, which, while it's no masterpiece, is an interesting watch because it has no plot whatsoever. And now usually people say that in an effort to convey with some hyperbole that a movie has very little plot or a weak plot. But in the case of Slacker, this movie literally has no plot whatsoever. This movie is made up of a bunch of long takes of quirky characters discussing whatever it may be, mostly conspiracy theories, and the audience and camera is sort of just along for the ride. One conversation will end, characters go their separate ways, the camera follows one of them, that character runs into a new situation, repeat. In this way, Slacker reminds me of that 24-hour music video they made for Pharrell Williams' Happy, so it's pretty gimmicky, but this is a fun movie and I enjoyed it. The idea here is to capture the organic entertainment that is these odd individuals and their day-to-day habits, and there's something to appreciate about the natural, mundane look this film provides. It's something I can testify is indeed very real. This movie feels like a natural starting point for the filmmaker that Linklater would later become, and the way Slacker immerses one in this random but genuine world makes it come off like a less organized, more light-hearted version of Robert Altman's Shortcuts. Some of the dialogue is admittedly interesting, borderline quotable, but there's something that doesn't sit right about a project that throws out the window so much tradition developed over decades of filmmaking. The camera work is sufficient, but lacks impact in staying with a very wide frame. Also, movement between scenes is often inconsistent with no regard to the 180-degree rule, which, I don't know, I feel like that's pretty fundamental, pretty basic. We're not making trance here. To wrap up, I like this movie. It's a no-brainer addition to the collection. Pretty unique, but it's a one-trick pony, not a project with much depth, and its camera work is far from flawless. Although, another counterpoint, some people will love this movie in the way people love movies like Clerks, and the Criterion release of this film is incredible both in its packaging and design. Wings of Desire is a movie that takes its time about things and gives priority to putting the audience in a certain state. More than dialogue, this movie is about visuals. More than plot, it's about feelings. In fact, about the first half of this movie is dedicated to angel figures wandering about, watching over humanity, as they evidently have since the dawn of time. This movie is about one of those individuals wishing to fall to a state of mortality and join humanity, and the choice to dedicate so much time to this initial portion effectively conveys the feeling of an eternity of waiting, but that makes his eventual transition more effective. To a degree, the movie had lost me at this point, but that's me. The flick's called Wings of Desire, a fitting title that should tell you exactly what you're in for. Altogether, it's a pretty profound movie about the value of mortality with a decent look to it. Looks great in crisp black and white. Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds make an appearance and mesh pretty well with the established tone. Marion's final monologue, to me, comes off over-sentimental, worthy of eye-rolling, almost incoherent, in that it covers things discussed in the film that don't logically connect as a single monologue, but I also suspect that there's something lost in translation here. She's consistently subtitled as using the word serious as a substitute for a word I assume doesn't exist in English, and I can only assume the dialogue is less awkward in its original form. I don't know, I don't speak German. Wings of Desire is a movie for a certain kind of viewer, and I think they know who they are. All I could think is how much this movie could have used more Nick Cage. It's a movie that probably requires additional watches for full comprehension, but I'm not eager to throw this thing on again anytime soon. Cross Willy Wonka with Evil Dead and you might come up with something comparable to House, which is a batshit crazy relic of 70s Japanese horror. It's impossible to take this movie seriously because it's not scary in the slightest. Its appeal comes in its over-the-topness and laughable moments alongside occasionally genuinely unique ideas that sometimes almost work. This is a unique film, perhaps valuable for pushing the technology of the time to create something bizarre, but it's still a surprising addition to the collection because this shit has the standards of an asylum movie. That considered, should a pal suggest that we watch House for any reason, any day of the year, I'd be down. This movie's so bad its good sense makes House a movie that could definitely be a hit with the right audience, in spite of, or rather because of, its flaws. Apparently there's something lovable about awful special effects, costumes that look like tacky Halloween shit, and adult actors that could take acting tips from Jaden Smith. And such is the case with The Thief of Bagdad. Innovative? Hell yes. Convincing? Not really. This movie is a wonder of cinema without your 7.5 corrective lenses. And hey, maybe the filmmakers never anticipated Blu-ray quality standards. In modern day, this film has traded the sense of wonder it offered audiences of the 40s for camp and charm. It's interesting to experience the roots of films like Raiders of the Lost Ark or Aladdin, and as far as being a worthwhile watch goes, it's a valuable piece of film history for being the first film to effectively use blue screen techniques, even if they are awful by today's standards. The Thief of Baghdad is worth a single watch for the same reason the original King Kong is. Just don't expect something that holds up to this very day. Midway through, it even makes a drastic change from a modestly paced story of star-crossed lovers to the zany adventures of a completely different character. In some ways it's a mess, in others it paved the way for future great films. And those are 5 Criterion films that I just so happen to have recently watched. I feel like my comments effectively conveyed how I felt about each film. If I had to purchase one of them, I'd probably go with Breathless, maybe Slacker, just because the release is so sick. But we've got a sale on our hands, and some of you may be looking for higher caliber films to watch, perhaps purchase. So in the way of recommendations, I've got some better ones for you. For any Coen Brothers fans or fans specifically of the film Inside Llewyn Davis, I would highly recommend Criterion's release of the film, which itself is absolutely fantastic. But over releases that are available at a lower cost, this thing is absolutely stacked with features, and for someone like me to be able to look behind the curtain of the work of cinema gods and legends Joel and Ethan Coen is more than worth the steeper price. If you're looking for a drop-dead gorgeous film, director Terrence Malick, take your pick. I would specifically recommend either The Thin Red Line or Days of Heaven as some of the best looking movies ever shot. Pending any kind of issues with the Blu-ray transfer or release, Punch Drunk Love, which is making its Blu-ray debut with Criterion during this sale, is a film that I will definitely be picking up. A very odd film, but in my mind, one of Paul Thomas Anderson's best. To anyone looking for an extremely well shot, well framed movie, maybe a bit of foreign cinema with a killer story to boot, maybe check out Wong Kar-wai's In the Mood for Love. And to anyone looking for a charismatic bit of Golden Age Hollywood, a real barn burner, I would recommend Sullivan's Travels. And that's the Criterion Cram. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what Criterions you have picked up or plan to pick up during this sale. Have a good one. I'll see you guys next week, but for now, I'm afraid this is.